Hello and welcome to 1000 PS TV. With the TKC80 Generation 2, Continental has completely revamped a true classic in the 50/50 tyre segment. I've already ridden it for you today, both off-road and on-road, and after the intro you'll find out what the new one does better than the old one, or where there might still be a couple of weaknesses. It does feel a bit strange being out here in Portugal on a tyre whose roots go back about as far as my own age, because the TKC80 has been around for 40 years now. Of course, it hasn't always been exactly the same tyre. Over the decades, it's been continuously developed and improved. But even so, only now is the second generation hitting the market, where the product basically gets a new model name. The first TKC80 has a lot of history to tell. It was fitted for the tour in the well-known TV series Long Way Round, and it was, of course, original equipment on a huge number of bikes. And now Gen 2, the next generation of the TKC80, is just around the corner and will soon be available from tyre dealers in 10 different sizes. By the way, the old one comes in 25 sizes, and that's why it'll also remain in the lineup. I've brought Robert Rubin over here, the motorcycle tyre specialist from Continental Austria, and he can explain what's new about this tyre far better than I ever could. Robert, let's maybe go through it briefly. What's the big change with Generation 2? Where have you been refining things?
In the end, it's a completely newly developed tyre. From the carcass, the internal structure, through the rubber compound, all the way to the tread design, everything is new. Everything was taken apart, tackled from scratch, and tested individually.
We've already ridden it a bit now. It really is impressive. It feels extremely good, at least as far as you can say that without a direct back-to-back comparison with the predecessor. But what I found interesting, for example, is that there's clearly been a lot of work done on the rolling noise. And I think there are different width gaps between the tread blocks. Could you maybe quickly show us that or explain what was done there?
Yeah, so basically we've got a new tread design. We've got larger contact patches, bigger tread blocks. On the predecessor, the old TKC80, it was basically like this. You had one block in the center, then two staggered blocks left and right, then back to one in the center again. So you were riding on one block on two edges, on one block on two edges. Here, if you look at it now, you've got a closed center strip.
You mean here in this strip in the middle where the bike rolls? Right here.
In the center, yeah. I can't quite get in there properly, but you can imagine it rolls along really nicely, very evenly, very consistently. And what you mentioned as well, we've got different distances here between the tread blocks, just to break up the frequency a bit. So overall, it runs quieter now, but also smoother. I hope you felt that too.
Yeah, at least so far I haven't felt acoustically annoyed by it. Very good. And I think we've got 17% more area. So basically more knob area. That means more grip on the tarmac, if I'm understanding it right. Exactly. And the knobs also have their own shape, sort of. Can you say a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's staggered now, like I said before. One block in the middle, two edges, it's now staggered.
But the leading edge and the trailing edge of the knobs have been modified as well, haven't they?
Exactly. It's been designed asymmetrically too. The leading edge is straight, the trailing edge runs off at a slight angle. The idea behind that, having that straight edge, is that you can really bite in nicely, especially off-road.
Got it. And something else I remembered from the technical presentation is that the length of the knobs, so the knob edge, has been increased. That obviously gives me more traction in the dirt when I get on the gas. Simply more surface area that can push back against the resistance. And also, which I think is really cool, we've got these side knobs that are set slightly further out. And the advantage there is that when I accelerate, the tyre can kind of brace itself against the terrain here as well, which I think wasn't really the case before. Back then, it was, I think, more in one line. So this way, when I tip it into a corner, I've got a bit more drive and support off-road.
So the main reason is basically what we've been riding today so far. We've mainly been on gravel roads with quite a lot of hardpack in the mix, but if you were to get into deeper terrain, then you've got an extra edge here that when the tire really digs into something deep, sand or whatever it might be, deep gravel, that side edge can build a bit more grip again.
What I think I remember is that the Carcass now damps more, so it's become a bit softer, more comfortable, but the shape of the Carcass is the same, right? Compared to the previous model.
It's become more stable. The shape, the contour, has stayed the same. So the agility, meaning the left to right transitions and so on, how much effort you need to put in, that's remained the same as the predecessor. But the Carcass itself has also been completely redeveloped in terms of materials, and it's now more robust again in terms of puncture resistance and punctures.
So basically you've got more rubber then and stronger plies, got it. And maybe a quick word on the old TKC80. That one was available in, I think, 25 sizes or so. Is it staying in the lineup?
It's staying in the program. It'll basically be downgraded to a second liner, but it remains in the range. So all those classic or older sizes people used to fit back in the day will stay with the TKC80. With the TKC80 second generation, we're not doing those anew. At least up to now, we haven't added them to the size portfolio, but with the size range we do have, we'll certainly cover 90% of demand, at least for all the modern bikes as well.
And finally, a quick word from you on delivery times and availability. From when will it be available in the tire trade?
In the first quarter, we should be able to cover most of it, except for the old size for the older GS, 110/80/19 and 150/70/17. That will follow at the start of quarter 2. One thing we still need to mention, the biggest leap has been made in wet performance. Unfortunately, we can't test that today. Maybe we can send the 1000 PS crew a set of tires afterwards when there's properly lovely rainy weather. But that's actually where the biggest jump is.
I mean, today we've only got a first riding impression anyway. I already said it. Without a direct back-to-back comparison with the previous model, it's relatively difficult to verify. But I think you're saying 15% better wet performance. I'm afraid in summer we won't be spared that in Austria either. So we'll strap a set onto a long-term test bike and then try out what it feels like in the rain. When it came to the look, Conti didn't want to stray too far from the first generation with the TKC80 Gen 2. The aim was to stay as close as possible to that tread design. Even so, they obviously experimented with a crazy number of different patterns. Then they played around with rubber compounds too, on the one hand, brand new ones, on the other compounds Conti already uses on other tires, and of course with Carcasses as well. After that came an endlessly long test period, and then the tires went through homologation. So it was a really long process before this tire could actually come to market. You've got to picture it. According to Conti, they built around 250 radial prototypes, tested more than 190 competitor tires, ran more than 50 long-term durability tests, and carried out over 94 high-speed tests. So an insane amount of testing and development work sits behind a tire like this. What's interesting, by the way, is that the tire wasn't developed, say, at the Dakar Rally or at other motorsport events or on some round-the-world trip. Instead, everything was developed at Conti's Tire Development Center in Texas, in the USA. So a Conti engineer told me 24 standardized test loops there with different types of surfaces, for example. And every time the tire just rides round and round the same circuit, then they swap the prototype and the next one goes round the same loop. That way you get a direct comparison of which component works better and which works worse. Because if you just rode around all over the place, the test parameters simply wouldn't be comparable. So for me, it was interesting to learn that everything about this tire was developed in one development center in the US. Okay, so now I've brought in the full riding technique expertise from the 1000 PS house. Bernd Hiemer, former supermoto racer, now stunt rider, riding coach, and so on. Bernd, you rode the test tour with us today. What was your impression of the new TKC80 Gen 2?
So, I already know the first TKC80 from test tours. I've been riding adventure bikes since 2012, so I know the old tire as well. Of course, it's hard to say without a direct comparison whether it's really 10% better or not. But what you can definitely say is you get very good feedback, and that's always what matters most to me. Right at the limit, you can feel whether the tires are starting to slide or not when you ride dynamically, which is something I really enjoy doing. And yeah, especially on the road, the point is we don't want to be drifting all the time, even if we're riding briskly and fast. We want to feel where the limit is. And there I have to say, really very good feedback, but yeah, a direct comparison would still be really exciting.
Does the tire make your life harder now because it's more difficult to drift since the grip is so good? Or can you still make it happen?
I swapped again and deliberately jumped onto the big bikes. And with more power, it's obviously completely stress-free. With, let's say, middleweight stuff, around 1,000 cubic centimeters, it wasn't quite so easy. Getting it right up to the limit, it was just lacking a bit of power there, so that could well be where the 1,000 cubic centimeters comes in.
But yeah, I was riding behind him and he managed it with the middle weights too, very spectacularly, almost intimidating how sideways you come around the corner sometimes. You're definitely the nightmare of every tire manufacturer. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Thanks, Bernd, for your assessment. To wrap things up, I'd like to leave you with a few numbers I didn't exactly memorize. But this is what Conti is promising us as improvements for the new Gen 2 of the TKC80. Specifically, 10% better off-road grip, 8% better handling, 3% better dry grip, 10% better stability when lowered at higher speeds, and 15% improved wet grip. Yeah, so you can see these are basically figures somewhere between 3 and 15%. And those are things you simply can't really judge objectively out here without a direct back-to-back comparison with the previous model. All I can say from my side is the riding impression was extremely positive. I never once had a bad feeling. We set off today on damp roads. Even there, I already had the subjective sense that the new higher silica content is doing its part in making you feel comfortable on wet tarmac. Yeah, and the rest you can really only find out in a proper long-term test, when you ride the tire over several thousand kilometers in all sorts of weather conditions. That's exactly what we at 1000 PS will do for you. That's what the long-term test fleet is for. And that's it from me as well. I hope the video was informative and you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. Otherwise, I'm looking forward to us being out on the road together again soon. See you soon, yours, Clemo.